Hey everyone, number two again. I don't know what it is, this computer. It recorded it weird. It didn't do the right file. So let's hope this time it does the right file. I don't mind talking, but I got things I gotta do besides talk on a computer all day. Um, Today I talk about big towns versus little towns. I grew up in a small town, smaller than this town. This town has 10,000, or I grew up in a town of 7,000. When I first moved to this town, it only had like 8,000. So in the last 15 years, it's grown by 2,000 people, which is pretty slow, I guess, but still, it's grown. Um, this town, like where I grew up, had a reservoir nearby. They got two actually here, Green Peter and Foster. Where I grew up, it was Cooper Creek. And my grandfather was involved in building it. It was a valley before that, but the town of Sutherland, where I grew up, had a problem with flooding every year. And what they did was they built this reservoir to control the water so it wouldn't flood anymore. When I was a boy, you walked in downtown and the curbs were this high off the ground because the water would go through there from flooding would go through the town like that. And the high curbs kept water on the roads, I guess, instead of gushing up into businesses and stuff. So anyway, I've been to big places. I've been to in those days. The big city for me was Eugene, and then later on, I went to places like Albany and Corvallis and Salem. Those are bigger cities here in Oregon, also. And then, of course, finally, the biggest city in Oregon, which is Portland. And Sutherland, where I grew up, is right next to a not a huge place, but Roseburg, which is at least double the size of Sutherland. It's at least 14,000, 15,000 more. You know, that was a big city in a lot of ways. But it was like where I live now, about the same distance. It was like 12 miles from home, where this is about 15 miles to Lebanon, which is the next biggest city. So they're all different, but alike in a lot of ways. I moved from Sutherland up to Eugene, and I lived in the Eugene area or Springfield. So Eugene and Springfield are almost. I got tape on here. Springfield and Eugene are almost the same place. They're basically divided by a highway that goes down the middle between them. Springfield on one side and Eugene on the other side. You know, that's pretty much what divides them difference. Springfield is more places to live, houses and stuff. It's small businesses along one route. It's almost like here in that respect. And then Eugene on the other side has the University of Oregon, and excuse me, it's got more businesses and stuff, more like a city. But they still have their areas of houses too. More richer people live in Eugene usually. Like I'm sure there's poorer parts of Eugene, but Springfield is more poor people, more middle class. Not as many rich places as in Eugene. I grew there. I lived there for a good 15 years. Most of my young adulthood was in Eugene. Then I moved from Eugene area up to here. Was a town nearby called Crawfordsville. I lived there for a little bit. And then I live here in Sweet Home for 15 years. I think I live here longer here than I have anywhere else now. I guess because it reminds me of where I grew up, and I own this house, so I'm paying for it still. But I mean, basically, I'm the owner of it, not renting. I rented all my life till that point. But anyway, big cities people are more distant as a rule. They're not as friendly as you pass by them. I mean, there's nice people in some big cities. There's different areas of road or of Portland up there that if you belong to those people, that culture, then they're friendly. Like the Portland's unusual. Portland actually was a group of small places, towns that grew together into a huge city. And so some parts of Portland are still predominantly certain things. Like there's a Russian part of Portland. There's areas of Portland where black people live, African Americans. I never could quite get that terminology, but that is. I didn't grow up in it. My town was all white. I really didn't meet a black person until I was out of high school. So to me, I say black person. I'm not trying to be offensive in any form or way. I'm just trying to, if you're a certain type of person, you're still human. Just your skin color is different than mine, basically. Your culture is a little different than mine. But you're still a human being. You're still, are nice people and bad people. But anyway, and then there's all the Hispanic section of Portland, and there's probably a people from India part of Portland. It might be a Native American part of Portland. I don't know. It might be. Those people in those areas, they're friendly with they're within their group. And you got the poor side of town. You got Burnside. It used to be where people living on the street and were really down and out and bad drug problems and stuff. And you know, but that's true of both places. Both up there in Portland, down here in Sweet Home, we have homeless people. People who are down in luck that are living on the street, living in made up tents, made up like mine, have tarps, or they buy old cheap tents from stores like Walmart, and they're living in them. They're still both places. Both places kind of solved the problem by creating places for them to live, little shelters that they can live in and get off the street. That's part of what Sweet Home has to help get them off. I live a block away from the post office and the library of this town. It has a big parking lot beside those two places, and I used to have a lot of homeless people in there. They never came up my street. They never bothered me. They hung up in their little spot down there, and that was it. They were never a problem for me. And I still see them from time to time walking around town. Town started to get kind of mean about it. Sweet Home has a law. I don't know if it's still on the books or not, but if you're ousted out of this town more than a couple times, arrested and asked to leave, then you're banned from town for like 6 months where you can come back. That was trying to cut down on the homeless people in town. But then they came across the idea of building shelters for them to live in, which I think is a better solution. And now they live more out in those places, and you don't see them too often anymore. I have no problem with homeless people. Don't bother me. Most of them are fairly nice people, just down on their luck. So that's common both towns, not just big towns have that problem. I'm not hear noise. Okay. But anyway, guess that'll be it for today. I got to go do something. I'll talk some more tomorrow. Everybody take care of each other. Pay it forward always. Okay? Okay.